This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, we have our first big development, no pun intended, in our home city's mayoral race. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Real Talk. As you likely know, this fall, Alberta's municipalities will go to the polls. A municipal election that will guaranteed see change at Edmonton's City Hall, that could see change at Calgary's City Hall, and across Alberta. In communities, both urban and rural, will probably send a bit of a message or give us some insight into how communities are feeling about how they're currently being steered, how they're being planned, designed, developed, rolled out, the folks' happiness or their belief in the performance of their councils, their mill rates, what they're paying in property taxes. Of course, there's some sprinkling of municipalities' relationships with the provincial government, with the feds, and more. Never mind the referendum questions that could be asked on those ballots as well. More on that at episodes to come. Of course, back to the Alberta separation talk and more, but not today. Today, we're going to take a look at an issue in not just Alberta's capital city, but across the country. That's the issue of infill construction. How do you deal with density? How do you deal with regentrification? How do you deal with an influx in population in the major cities? And, of course, how do you deal with the affordability and housing crises that we're seeing across the country? Not just in Vancouver and not just in Toronto. Calgary's got a hot real estate market and a real crunch there as well. Edmonton is adding about 100,000 new residents every 2 years or so and is feeling the pinch there as well, especially for first-time home buyers, for families, for new Albertans that have answered that Alberta's Calling campaign and beyond. So, who you might describe as the front runner, or certainly one of two front runners in Edmonton's mayoral race, incumbent councillor Tim Cartmell announces, kind of out of the blue, that he's proposing a pause on infill construction in the city. Now, this is a contentious issue, and of course, I don't have to tell this audience, I'm sure that bylaw changes have allowed for different styles of builds in neighborhoods across big cities. It's been very contentious in Calgary. It's been extremely contentious in Edmonton, as some folks have seen their neighborhoods change a little bit, not just in how they look, but in how many people live there, what parking looks like, and what the whole vibe of the street looks like as it evolves and as these communities grow. Cartmell proposing a pause on infill construction, a moratorium on all new infill, which of course sends ripples across communities, people that have been advocating for this exact sort of thing, but also for those that have maybe invested in so-called tear-down properties, that have invested in lots on which they intend to build, in some circumstances, fourplexes, sixplexes, or more, right? Obviously, entrepreneurial opportunity, real estate investment opportunity, but also, to a certain degree, private investors, for the most part, putting their money into what they believe could be a solution for folks that can't find housing, that are eager to either maybe downsize or to level up. Cartmell says when the new zoning bylaw came into effect, the promise was bold: modernize the way that we grow our city, create more housing options, and make neighborhoods more complete. And while we've seen a lot of success 18 months in, it's clear that we're missing the mark on infill. Cartmell says, I've heard you. Edmontonians are not opposed to growth, but they are opposed to being left out of it. So here's what he's putting in front of voters. Let's be honest, this has absolutely everything to do with the upcoming municipal election. On the upcoming public hearing date of June 30th, Cartmell will move a motion, he says, to place a moratorium on all new infill development. Now, this will catch the attention of people across the country, and I'm sure potentially inspire other city councilors, other mayors in other communities, depending on how this flies. Cartmell says Edmonton's infill strategy has moved faster than our infrastructure, faster than our planning, and faster than public trust. There's the big one. He says we need to pause, reflect, and fix what's broken before we approve more of the same. Now, for background, relevant or not, you decide. Cartmell is a professional engineer. He's been involved in building cities before. And when reporters had a chance at City Hall to ask him after this announcement, here's a brief portion of how that Q&A went.
What I'm hearing, because we've had this conversation for the last few weeks, okay, there's these few very modest sort of tweaks. That's not what people are looking for. They're looking for a halt and a conversation. They don't feel like they've been heard, and they want things to stop until they are. And so that's what I'm reflecting.
Obviously, I'm talking to you as a mayoral candidate. Clearly, this is you thinking this is sort of an important election issue. This is kind of the thing that's going on in Edmonton right now.
Well, and this is the interesting thing. I've been, very clear about my intentions since last November. I've had a lot of opportunity for conversation. I've talked a lot about building it better. Quite frankly, the storm of feedback that I've heard about building it better includes these infill projects, and there's a number of mature neighborhoods that are very upset. One thing I have prided myself on in my 2 terms on council is being available to people, to engaging, to having conversations. It's a representative democracy. I'm trying to represent what people's wishes are, and their wishes are, let's at least stop this for the moment and have a conversation. And I think they're right.
All right, so we're going to be getting to our Real Talk live chat in a second on this, as you know, powered by Park Power. And we're going to talk to a homeowner, someone who built his own dream home. He's a friend of the show. He's been writing into the show about infill for quite some time, so he was the obvious guest. Real talk, real issues, real people. We're going to get to Travis Watt in just a second. But what's the other front runner? What's one of the other incumbents who's seeking the mayor's office saying about this? Well, Andrew Knack says, by way of his account on X, we can't stop building homes at a time when we are facing a housing crisis, an affordability crisis, and a population boom. And I do think that to a certain degree, that's a compelling argument. Knack says we'll continue to refine the zoning rules as we have for the last decade. If additional refinements are needed, other than what's being discussed on June 30th at this public hearing, motions can and should be made that day to make those additional changes. So here we have probably the first really big, obvious difference in the 2 perspectives between these mayoral candidates, and I guarantee you that this is strategic on both of their parts. Knack's is no surprise. Cartmell's may be. Cartmell voted for the city plan before, right? He says that. He acknowledges that on his account on X as well. They're going back and forth in true Canadian fashion, as polite as can be. Cartmell says, I voted in support of the city plan, but we need to build a city that believes in bold ideas and recalibrates when it needs to. Remember we talked about this on a recent episode, politicians that can walk something back or change their minds and how the public feels about it? Not necessarily a flip-flop, right? Cartmell is spinning this, and I'm not saying that cynically, but he's presenting this as, I have listened to you. You have spoken, and I have heard you. Cartmell, of course, the leader of a party, this is the first municipal election we're seeing political parties, says this party will be one that embraces failure to fix it fast. You know who that's good for? It's good for the 12 other candidates that are running in the other ridings under Cartmell's banner, right? Now, they don't have to answer the specific questions from a personal perspective on what they're going to do in their mature neighborhoods because the party's already released its position. And by the way, mature neighborhoods, in large part, are the ones who vote. Cartmell says, this is the kind of city building I believe in, and it's what I'll deliver as your next mayor. Travis Watt is a longtime Edmontonian, and a relatively short time ago, he and his family built their dream home. And then something changed. Travis is a great friend of the show, and he's agreed to join us to talk about this issue. It's nice to see your face. Look at you rocking the Real Talk mug. My man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jespo. First time.
Yeah, well, hey, well-deserved. Like I said, you've been emailing us, talk@ryanjesperson.com, for a long time about infill. Your name was literally the first one that I thought of when this issue surfaced with Cartmell's announcement. Before we get into your personal story, your thoughts on the move that he's making, this moratorium. Is it the right move?
Yeah, we've been asking for it here in Grosvenor for a while now. And it's basically just that there are so many issues in terms of what's going up. Was this what they planned on going up? They're already talking about dropping from 8 to 6. Why is 6 now the number? And in speaking with Cartmell a few months ago, talking about my situation, he at that time said 8 is too many on a lot. I don't like what's happening next to you. This needs to change. So I appreciate Councillor Cartmell coming out and saying enough is enough. And I mean, he was there on June 3rd, Jespo, for the meeting. I listened for almost 12 hours as citizen after citizen after citizen came to speak. And mostly the counselors didn't even acknowledge the 5-minute presentation. And there were different things brought up: mental health, parking, garbage, solar panels. And it just seemed like it was on deaf ears, other than, it sounds like, Cartmell and probably councillors Rice and Principe. So it's nice to hear that he's finally saying, I'm hearing what people are saying. And for 12 hours, almost every single person that spoke was against these 8-plex mid-block builds. And all they were saying is, we need to pull this back a little bit. And it's not saying don't build infill in our neighborhood. It's just saying, let's do this in a way that's responsible.
Okay. Worth noting that Councillor Karen Principe is also running as a candidate for the Better Edmonton Party, which is Tim Cartmell's party. Travis, I'm going to jump in and out of the live chat powered by Park Power as we talk, and then I'm going to get you to tell your family's story. You've provided some photos for us as well, so people can kind of understand what your reality's been like and what's been fueling your advocacy. Gilles in our live chat. By the way, Gilles, amazing to see you volunteering at the Real Talk Golf Classic. Thank you so much. Best dressed guy on the course. Gilles says low-density housing is the most expensive built form for municipal taxes. He says this means an immediate property tax increase for all Edmontonians, or would mean, Jill. I'm sure that's what you mean, obviously, because I think we all know that this is going to fail on June 30th. I think what Cartmell's doing is throwing this out there, putting it in front of Edmontonians and painting a picture of what an initiative might look like when he's mayor. This isn't going to happen on June 30th. I would almost guarantee it. Boom Shanker X, meantime, says somebody tried to turn a home near me into a 60-child daycare. The neighborhood put a petition together to stop it. 60 cars in and out every day would have been an absolute gong show. So, Travis, your family has this home in Grosvenor. Give us an idea for those. I mean, people are going to be listening outside of Alberta as well, maybe not exactly sure. Give me a general sense of what the Grosvenor neighborhood looks like, what the composition looks like, architecturally, the vibe there. And then tell us your story about your infill build. You can't say all infill's evil. You guys built a nice, beautiful infill, but then tell us what happened next door.
Yeah, so Grosvenor's, I think the school's 1949, and the houses, the bungalows are all sort of in that era, up to like mid-50s, I believe. And there are 4-plexes already in Grosvenor. I think there might even be some 6-plexes in certain parts of Grosvenor, and they are built in a manner where when you walk through the neighborhood, you actually barely notice them. They are set back in line with the other bungalows. They kind of just blend in with the neighborhood. And that's more or less what people are saying, is there's a way of doing this that's responsible. So it's an older neighborhood, but we have a lot of new families moving in. And the families that are moving in are going to the school. The school is fuller than ever. I don't even know if they have a ton more room for more students at this point, but it is getting pretty full. So the example that we're going through, so we bought a bungalow here. It was our first home after we got married in 2011. It was our first home. We saved up. We used our RSPs. The first time home buyers plan. We basically put all of our money into a bungalow. We lived here until last year, and we used a little bit of inheritance money to build basically our dream home on the exact same lot. So we love this neighborhood. My brother lives across the alley. Our best friends live across the alley. We did not want to leave. And the example I use when I try and explain to people, like, this is the biggest investment I will ever make in my entire life. This isn't even all my money. I chose this lot for a reason. I invested my life savings as well as futures money to live here for a reason. And basically, when someone comes in, and 2 weeks after we moved into our dream home, the builder next door knocked on my door and came and chatted with me and explained that they would be building an 8-plex next door. So we basically had 2 weeks in our new home until we learned what would be happening. So in my opinion, when you buy a piece of land, you have a right to know what you're buying and what is going to be going up next door, or what is allowed to go up next door. And some people want to buy on a quiet street with tree-lined streets. And I think as homeowners and people investing that kind of money, you do have a right to know where you're going to live. And I don't think that's too much to ask. In Grosvenor, Jespo, I don't know if you've driven through here at all. We do have some really nice infills, some end caps, like the row housing that I think people see in most of the infill advertising. And they look fantastic. We all think they're a nice addition to the neighborhood, with maybe a few issues here and there. But and again, going back to the 8-plex, if you drop that to 4, you're quadrupling the units on that land. It used to be a single older lady living in a bungalow. You now have 4 different units. You're quadrupling the density. I guess what we're asking is, why is quadrupling not enough? And why do we have to go 8, 6? it just seems like it's too much. And you just saw those pictures in a 3-block span in Grosvenor. Those are all going up. Like this isn't like, oh, it's just a few of these going up. They're everywhere right now in this neighborhood.
Okay, Waddy, I'm going to get into the live chat here. Some folks are with you, some aren't, and I want to give you a chance to kind of respond to it. This is, I mean, obviously you knew that's coming. This is a very polarizing issue, and like I'm even like, listen, everybody, like there's a lot of people in here talking right now that somebody says this guy is a total NIMBY, like right, the not in my backyard. Others are saying like everybody wants affordable high density housing unless it's in their neighborhood, right? Then nobody else wants it. Justin says, oh no, something doesn't fit your aesthetic taste. Better fire up a petition to force somebody to conform to your standards and worry about your property value, which is a thing, folks. Property value. You can't just brush that away, but we'll take Justin's point. Randy, meantime, says, and this is a great point from Randy, says, can somebody please define responsible? Randy says, I'm all for infill. I'm for multi-residential. He says, I get that folks don't want it, but what does do this responsibly mean? If we were all having beers together, what would you say to them?
I mean, I guess what I've asked several people who, and NIMBY is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but I've literally walked through this neighborhood with Andrew Knack and we've with a couple other community members and shown him, this is infill. This is an 8-plex on a corner lot. It looks beautiful. We actually think this is great. So this isn't NIMBY. We aren't saying not in my backyard. I would also say, just use my example and use other people's example. You are making the biggest investment in your life. You are settling down with your family on a quiet lot in a quiet neighborhood. And in Crestwood, this is happening. This person just moved his family into Crestwood, and on either side of him is an 8-plex. I don't think these people would be speaking the same way if it was happening to them after making the biggest investment in their lives. And if they do still want that, then I guess we just agree to disagree, and that's totally understandable.
Okay, I would like, for having born and raised in Calgary, lived the last 20 years in Edmonton, for a Calgary audience, I would compare Crestwood to something like Mount Royal. Some of Edmonton's most beautiful homes are in Crestwood. Ms. KD here pointing out, she says, those bungalows, like the one that you have, Waddy, she says they're on massive lots. Now, I would imagine you'll say, yeah, that's one of the reasons why we bought it in the first place. And for folks keen on high density stuff, they're probably saying, well, that represents a lot of opportunity. So spell it out for us. Like, what has been the biggest issue for you? Is it aesthetic? Is it parking? Is it noise? Is it your perceived loss or real loss maybe in your city assessment on your property value? Like, what are the main things that are grinding your gears?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of everything. It's now we have up to 16, 20 people living next door to us. When we bought this lot, there was one person. It's a lot of traffic, a lot of people. We purposely built a house with a large backyard so our kids could play soccer back there. And we now have 20 people coming in and out, probably renters that'll be in and out of that house regularly. We did not buy a lot to be next to a condominium. There are lots of spots where there are condominiums, and it's a great spot on the corner lots to put these things where they're kind of off to the side of the neighborhood. But again, I go back to it, and you talk about property value. Like, people are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, like their life savings in these lots, purposely because of where it is and the neighborhood it is and the block that it's on. And I have no idea what's going to happen to the property value of my house. I plan to live here for a long time, as long as things don't get too crazy. But Jespo, I talk to community members all the time. The 3-story picture I showed you, the 2-story house next door, they moved out. The bungalow next door to that one, they're moving out. Families are talking about moving out of Grosvenor, a community that they love, because of what's happening. And who are moving into basement suites in these complexes? I don't think they're going to be families sending the kids to the school. Maybe they are, and if they are, that's great. My hope is that maybe a couple of young kids move in next door. But it's hard to say the one thing other than people just want to know what they're investing in, and they want to know that their land is going to be sort of what they thought it was going to be when they bought it. And I think putting in a 4-plex next door, I think we would have been completely okay with it. That's quadrupling the density. Putting 8 new units and potentially up to 20 new people next door is a big change. And I think we just want council to acknowledge the fact that that's a lot of people and it's a big change, and that's why people are concerned.
All right. I want to ask you about your advocacy in just a sec, but I do want, I mean, the live chat's booming right now, so I want to get back into it. And I just got to push back on a couple of things. This is my personal perspective. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily wrong, but like Curtis, for example, all caps, says housing should not be an investment. It is a place to live. I mean, respectfully, Curtis, a huge part of it, whether this is good or bad, in 2008, it wasn't great, and it's happened again, I know, to a lot of people, and I'm not going to go into the condo ownership rabbit hole, but I'll just say that, like, our society, our economy, in large part, is built on people viewing housing as their biggest investment. And Travis, this comes back a lot to, like, what we talk about, oftentimes when you're taking, like, whether it's capital gains taxes, whether you're talking about first-time home buyer credits, whether, like, in any context, folks, and I don't say this as a pejorative, I'm talking generally speaking about generations, boomers, Gen X to a certain degree needs its housing value to hold for obvious reasons, because a big part of their nest egg is invested in their house, and that's been a big part of their investment and retirement plan, because that's what generations have done before them. And then you look at Gen Z, you look at millennials, you look at first-time home buyers, and they're viewing this housing market as totally unattainable, because housing values have gone from $65,000 bungalows in the 1970s to $900,000 bungalows in Calgary, $800,000 bungalows in Edmonton right now. And people are going, well, how are we supposed to pull this off? So there is, I think, a generational divide here as well. Would you acknowledge?
Oh, for sure. And I would use an example, though, Jespo. 2 years ago, my sister-in-law bought in the neighborhood, and she was able to get into a nice bungalow, older bungalow, for $375,000, let's say. The bungalows that are going up for sale in Grosvenor now, and I know of a couple families that are trying to get into the neighborhood, they are now in a one-day bidding war where they're going up $50,000 above listing price, because you are now competing with builders trying to build, bigger complexes. So these bungalows at $375,000 are actually quite affordable for a lot of families. But when they go up to $450,000, $475,000 to be torn down, now those families aren't moving into this neighborhood to buy that bungalow, and they're having to move out elsewhere to the burbs or maybe to another community. So, I mean, is it really producing affordable living? And that's another question for a lot of people, is these units are going, I haven't seen the rent on the ones next door, but I've been told that the rent is actually quite high, and that people that are renting them are saying, yeah, it's quite expensive really for what you're getting. So affordability is a very touchy subject. And again, I'm not an expert on any of this. I've said this to Andrew Knack. I said, I don't really have time to be going to these meetings, walking around the community. Like, I coach all my kids' sports teams. I have 2 jobs. I don't have time for this, and I'm not an expert. I'm just kind of speaking from personal experience and what we're going through and what we're seeing in our neighborhood. And nobody that wanted to come in and live in Grosvenor can afford to buy a bungalow right now that maybe could 2 years ago. So there's that side of it as well.
On our Real Talk live chat, get exclusive discounts on internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca/Real Talk. Michael says, one of my friends started a group of homeowners that signed a legal agreement. I think he's talking about a restrictive covenant in their neighborhood, that they would never convert their single detached to multi-family housing. He says it gets around Calgary's blanket rezoning. And there are restrictive covenants in many cities across the country. Obviously, I have always kind of mixed feelings on that. I've always thought that it's actually, if you look at your home as an investment, a restrictive covenant feels like you're nailing your feet to the floor when it comes to your property values. But I don't know. I mean, essentially what happens there, I'm not a lawyer, but the deed, essentially the property, there's a commitment on that property that will never change. It's not going to be torn down. Has there been discussion about that in your community groups? I mean, it's obvious you're going to say it's too late for your next door situation, but were people talking about that? Did you explore that as one of your options as you were lobbying council and the like?
Yeah, we have a group of concerned community members that have kind of started a chat group, and we're communicating with the Better Infill YG group, and the restricted covenant is something that's being discussed. I know Crestwood had a meeting in the last couple of weeks. Glenora had a meeting in the last couple of weeks. And I think the idea of it, and I agree with you, you are kind of tying your feet down in terms of the resale value of your lot in 20 years or whenever it is. But I think it's more of a sense of, community, where you're just trying to say, we just want to maintain some sense of what this community is and was. And I don't have any issue with people wanting to do what they can
Yeah.
on that front. And, as someone who's, again, has one next door, obviously it's not going to help me on that side, but my neighbors next door on the other side, maybe they sell their house and maybe I can convince them to sign one, and I don't have a giant condominium unit complex on either side of me. So
Yeah.
I see why people are doing it. And again, I haven't even read the comments, obviously, and I understand that people get upset when you talk about this stuff, and it's not. I'm born and raised in this city. I love this city. I actually don't want urban sprawl. I've been saying that for a long time. I think infill is important. Jespo, I've used the example with some people of Blatchford. So, and this is one of the issues that we've been talking about in Grosvenor, is the issue of these side entrances on these condos versus front entrances. In Blatchford, where they're building, and I wish they would build more faster, because that'd be a great solution to all the infill issues. In Blatchford, they actually focus on a sense of community by building houses with front-facing entrances. And it said it at their open house, we are going to build a community with front-facing entrances to create a sense of community. In Grosvenor, every 8plex has 2 front entrances, 2 entrances on either side, and 2 entrances on the back. So why is the city promoting front-facing entrances in Blatchford, telling us that it creates this sense of community, but in these older neighborhoods, that's not even a consideration? So what we brought up, and one of our members, Joe Miller, brought it up at the city council meeting. He says he calls it the Blatchford double standard. You're promoting one thing in your brand new neighborhood that you're creating, but then in our neighborhood, that's not a concern of yours. And it's another one of the things that's come up continually is these side entrances. So on the house next door, there will be 2 sets of families going into 2 different side doors, literally right next to our house, essentially. I know they're addressing the setback distance on that in this next meeting, but it's one of the concerns is, why is the city saying one thing over here, but then allowing one thing in these older neighborhoods?
Yeah, that's one of the first complimentary things I've ever heard about Blatchford. I don't mean any disrespect, but that community's been a debacle ever since they shut down the municipal airport. I will go on the record and say, let me just say, the team behind development at Blatchford has been asking to come on the show, because I don't think that they've, I don't think they like the way that I've been talking about it. I have high hopes for it. People that have invested in property there, I hope that they do well on it. But to this point, it's served as a prime example, in my candid opinion, as the reason why government needs to be out of business and why cities should not be in development. But I digress. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say when we talk about the housing crisis and you're talking about building homes, I mean, that is literally what Blatchford was meant to be, is all these new homes for a city that was starving for new homes. Let's get that going. As well as downtown, we have how many, used car dealerships that have been closed down for nearly a decade, it feels like. I mean, there's lots of land in this city. And again, we're still not saying don't do infill in these older neighborhoods. We're just saying, let's tone it down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I'll take a 4plex on either side of me happily. I would honestly at this point.
Okay, so I think that's you've said that twice in the interview now, and that's a big point, because I think that there are some people like how internet chats can get. No offense. And by the way, I want to give Curtis, because I always want to give people a chance to follow up to rebut. Curtis earlier was saying that housing is people's investment. He says that shouldn't be the concern. That's the problem. I replied. He says, Jespo, I do agree with you. He says housing is an investment in Canada. He says, but that's what's caused the housing crisis. Kenzie says there's nothing wrong with wanting to maintain your culture, have the same values and living standards. Plain Power says the city's so massive and so expensive to maintain, but nobody wants to pay. It's hypocrisy. Jim says builders and developers would build houses or condos on top of roads if they were allowed. He says there are really bad examples in Calgary where what Travis is talking about is a very real issue. We also have Noob Try Again, who's actually listening to us as he's doing a home inspection, which is kind of an interesting context for that. He says, I'm doing a home inspection as we speak, so I'm listening and jumping in and out of the chat. He says, but I've seen a ton. So this is the guy that's seeing homes. He's a home inspector. He's seeing houses all over the place. He says, I've seen a ton of these 8plexes plus double laneway above garage. So technically a 9 or 10plex, I guess. He says it is a little much. He says we need to have more consideration for parking and for infrastructure. But I do think it's relevant that you're sitting here saying you would take a 4plex on either side, because some of the comments here are unkind. This is what I was joking about earlier. People are implying, and I know you Travis, I'm just throwing this out there for what it's worth. People are saying this guy is afraid of immigration. This guy is afraid of lower income people. This guy's taking big swipes at renters. But I think it's significant for you to go on the record and reiterate that you wouldn't mind fourplexes.
When the builder came and told me he was building next door, I said, can you keep it at 4? He said, we're building. I said, can you just keep it at 4? And I mean, I run a social media account with, I am used to the attacks and the comments, and I understand both sides of this debate, Jespo. I've tried my best not to come across as one of those people, because that's not who I am at all. And I do my best to explain my concerns. And I think some of the other concerns, and I got it, my wife, Jespo, she wrote down some notes. She's like, make sure you talk about the garbage issue. There's certain things that I think the city's trying to address that they just haven't figured out yet. But like the 8plex down the road from us has a black bin for every suite and a green bin for every suite. And you can't fit the bins across the driveway. It's impossible. So there's just garbage and bins regularly strewn because they overflow, and the garbage issue is a real one, and I don't know how they're going to solve that. And the other issue is the main thorough roads through Grosvenor, so 103rd Ave, 104th Ave, 106th Ave. In the winter, when the ruts start to form, when there's cars parked along the sides, it is very difficult to pull out of the way for another car to come the opposite direction. And we are seeing some serious issues with just getting through our neighborhood right now, especially with 142 Street being closed. But the traffic issue is a very major one, and there's been accidents on 149th Street. There's been, I think, 2 to 3 accidents in the last 18 months, let's say, with cars trying to turn onto 104 or 103 Ave off 149th Street, but there's cars parked right up to the major road. And so there's like an issue with one car's trying to come on, one car's trying to come off, and there's been at least 2 accidents there. So these are all...
You're talking logistics, like the logistics of garbage pickup, and there's going to be snow clearing issues, obviously, if more street parking is becoming an issue as well. I'll take David's point. He says it's pretty privileged to say that a $375,000 home is affordable. He says lots of people can't afford the basics, let alone an investment like housing. David's 100% right. It blows my mind that we look at $1 million house these days as just like kind of a pretty nice house. Like after their starter home, they just went and grabbed $1 million house. I'm like, who are these people? I don't understand. I was just down in Calgary. My family, who are all these people buying these $1 million houses? As far as I know, not everybody's making $400,000 all of a sudden. Garth says your home should be your peace and your place of serenity. It says we spend time to find the best place to live, and to change structures in this manner so drastically, he says, could definitely be a gut punch. Gilles goes on to say owners today want to retain their investment, obviously, he says, but new owners want access. Also true. He says there will be pressure to hold value and we won't see increases. So, Travis, as we wrap, this goes before the public hearing. There's this public hearing June 30th. Obviously, the vote on this, I'm not going to say obviously it's going to fail, but obviously it's going to fail. But Cartmell has sounded the alarm. He's let Edmontonians know that he's aware that this is an issue. If I have to say, as somebody who comments on politics, they've obviously identified this as an issue with their target audience, the people that vote. And he's going on the record. And of course, he forces Andrew Knack into a position where Knack has to answer on it. And he has. So we have probably, I would say, the first real big difference between the two front runners in Edmonton. By the way, everybody, we'll be talking to mayoral candidate Jeff Davison out of Calgary next week. Looking forward to that one as we continue our coverage of the big city mayoral races. We also have big plans for Alberta's rural communities between now and the fall. More on that to come. But Travis, we'll give you a chance to wrap here, something to think about. What are you hoping to see? What would represent, as Randy asked earlier, responsible development? And what do you hope happens on June 30th?
I hope on June 30th that the councillors actually take some time to really listen to the presentations, as I don't really feel they did on June 3rd. I feel I want them to listen. I want them to ask questions, as opposed to last time where someone would speak for 5 minutes and it just seemed like they wasted 5 minutes of their day. And I just want people that are pushing back on what I'm saying. I understand and I get it, but I just want you to actually have some conversations with people who are going through this, who will see the other side, see this differently than you, and maybe just understand that we are not these terrible people that you think. We are just concerned community members that have lived here for a long time, that just want a little bit of a say of how our community is basically reconstructed and what it's going to look like in 20 years when I'm still here. So we're not horrible people. We're not racists, anything but. So yeah, I'll have to read the comments after, but
well, I've tried to stay on top of but there are a ton of them. I will say this, mayoral candidate Andrew Knack is watching as we speak, and he's just sent me a personal note, and he says he wants to call out some of the comments that I've been reading. He says Travis definitely isn't a NIMBY. This from Andrew Knack. He says he cares about his community, and that's why I appreciated being able to walk the community with him. You and Knack walked the community together. He says we have a lot of changes coming on June 30th that are a result of thoughtful advocacy from residents who both understand the need for density while also hoping for some reasonable changes. So that's from Andrew Knack, friend of the show.
Yeah, and I will say Andrew's been very receptive to any conversations. He's always happy to meet with members of the community. We agree to disagree on certain things, and that's fine, but I give him full respect for how he's handled. He gets a lot of pushback, obviously, in his ward. And I will just say that the two of the changes that they have proposed, well, three, I guess, 8 to 6 is a better than 8, obviously. The rear setback, I believe, is like 2.8 meters more pushback from the alleys. So it is making the houses a little bit shorter, which is an improvement. And they are increasing the side setbacks as well. So 3 changes that show they are listening and working on it. So, I mean, yeah, it's respectful conversation, and that's all I've asked for from day one.
Hey, man, thanks for making the time to. I mean, like for a lot of people that write into the show in particular, we appreciate all this. This is like exactly what we asked for, like real life insights, real world situations, but not everybody wants to come on the show and talk about it and take punches in the live chat. I appreciate you got a big smile on your face right now. I appreciate you doing it. I appreciate you helping us understand one person's experience in this. And obviously we put the invitation out for others to do exactly what Travis did. Be well. Have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it, Travis.
Thanks, Jespo. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, you got it. I see this response on Twitter. Hojunda says, I do agree that zoning rules need to be refined, but city council, he's talking to Andrew Knack, and says you need to grandfather in the applications that are already in queue for development permits. Says people have demolished their homes and they're waiting for development permits. And when you have a drop dead date of June 30th, then a lot of people will lose money, and I'm sure developers will band together for a class action suit. Hojunda says developers are just following the rules that you and council approved, and that's true, by the way, and not grandfathering the applications in queue is a slap in the face and could lose future investor confidence. Says, to be clear, I agree with refining the rules, but not at the expense of others. Provide a 60-day grace period where no new applications are accepted after June 30th for 8 units, but grandfather the ones in queue. You could probably argue for or against there, but can you argue that this is going to shake investor confidence? You probably could. And I'm sure that Cartmell will be answering questions on that, but at the same time, if this is a political strategy, if this is an election strategy, and if the Cartmell team, and I'm not speaking on behalf of them, and this is not their position, this is my speculation, if they suspect that his motion's going to fail on the 30th anyway, so no harm, no foul, and he scores a few points, right? He pushes Knack into a position where Knack has to go on the record and say what he would do or how he intends to deal with the homeowners that are upset about this type of thing. Quite frankly, it sounds like Knack's already made clear how he's dealing with it. He's going for walks with them and hearing them out and talking about them. And Knack, ever polite, right? Remember he was on this show a while ago. We're talking to all of the legitimate big mayoral candidates. Knack talked to us. So I asked, are you too nice to be mayor? Are you too nice to win an election? He got into it, but that's how he rolls. It's how he conducts himself. But think of the wording on this, right? He says we have a lot of changes coming on June 30th. He's answering the critics. He's answering those that are concerned. I'm not stumping for either candidate here. Knack says, that are a result of thoughtful advocacy from residents who both understand the need for density while also hoping for reasonable changes. That's a very diplomatic way of saying this isn't an election or a political stunt for us, right? That's what he's saying. We have changes coming as a result of thoughtful advocacy. That's a really nice way of putting it. Mr. Wade in our chat says a lot of those with types of restricted covenants, he figures that they should have much higher tax rates. Says 8 times. I don't know about that. 8-time tax rates. That's about as punitive as it gets. These restrictive covenants, I've never read one. I've never signed one. I've never been a part of one. So I'm only speaking at a surface level of my understanding of it. But it seems it's like I understand if you're like, some people are describing this as people that pull the ladder up after them, right?
Oh,
they climb the ladder and then they lose the ladder so no one else can join them. I don't know about
Homer or Simpson into the bush.
But the restrictive covenant, it's a way to say, like, you're with me, you're with me, you're with me. The whole street agrees. The whole street agrees that we want this street to look like this street does forever and ever. Amen. And I can understand the mindset there, 100%.
I think everyone can.
Can I also, like, cards on the table? I always try to be, I'm going to be real and honest as possible. We live in a part of the city in an architectural heritage zone, and I've shared this before. Our house is like 110 years old.
But you're lucky. It's not going to change.
Well, but there's a reason why we bought there as well, because it can't change. There is infill investment, but it's only a certain type because, like, that's a protected zone for cities that want to preserve some sense of history.
Yeah, and you're pretty much downtown, so you're very lucky.
Yeah, for sure, and we paid for it. But you can't tell me as well that those folks don't have a perspective too. Like, I think that most people would agree housing affordability and housing availability, kind of related, obviously, is a real issue and must be addressed. And most people agree that urban sprawl is an issue. Travis just acknowledged that.
Sure.
So you got to come up with a solution, and the question is, what does the solution look like?
We're banging our heads against the desk, and I'm looking at the comments, and I feel for Travis, but at the same time, like, it's like a loop, right? Like, he's complaining that his neighbor sold an old bungalow and turned it into a fourplex or an eightplex, but, like, maybe that bungalow was his neighbor's dream home when he bought it, him or her, in the 80s and 90s, and now they're getting ready to retire. And they want to cash in on their investment. The same way he's talking about he made an investment in his dream home. It's going to be his dream home. Does everyone who builds a dream home live there until the day they die? I mean, so the person next to him sells it, cashes in on their investment, retires. I don't see a problem with that. But I also see Travis's perspective when he finds a nice, quiet neighborhood to raise his family, builds a home, and then a few years later, all this stuff starts to happen. So, and this is the loop that is this. I don't know how the housing crisis is going to be solved, because as he's talking and he's saying, 375,000, I don't know if a lot of people in the next 5 to 10 years, I can't even imagine the nightmare 20 years from now, nobody's going to be able to afford a home.
That's
the
what I'm saying,
majority of people are already and will be renting and looking for. So I feel for those people too, because they want to rent in a nice neighborhood. Maybe they're a single mom living in a basement with a daughter or a son or whoever. They want to live not in urban sprawl. They want to live in a generally nice area with a park 2 blocks away. So, like, I don't know what the answer is here.
Yeah, Ytrium says the whole concept of quote unquote starter home was always bullshit. Well, I mean, here's the thing, like, people call it your starter home when it's your first home, but I think maybe what Ytrium's alluding to is the fact that it was always implied that you would scale up.
I don't
level up.
I don't like
but
that.
But look at these,
I don't like
the exact homes. I saw some of you asking about, is Grosvenor, is Travis's neighborhood downtown? Is it urban? Is it suburban? It's like 10 minutes, like 10, 12-minute drive from downtown approximately, big old trees. Grosvenor is for a lot of people, just that kind of like quiet street. Like you said, with the big lots, everybody has like the swing set, the campfire circle in their backyard, that kind of idea, right? Ken, Super Chat Ken says, reasonable setbacks and parking considerations are reality.
Sure.
Says there's no way you can't have good infill without being reasonable on these things. I'd also point out that this, Edmonton's not Vancouver, but Vancouver had a big issue, and like they've taken steps and they've tried some things that have worked and some things that haven't to discourage foreign ownership of residential properties there, because it's become such a big issue.
It's huge,
that investors from around the world have been buying, all kinds of properties in Vancouver at sky high prices, because that's nothing compared to the markets they're invested in. And then they're renting these out or just buying them and holding them and not even making them available as investment tools, as these nuggets in their portfolio. And so Vancouver's, like, by introducing heavier taxes and all kinds of barriers, has tried to address that. At some point in the world you describe, which I'm right there with you, I think whoever it was in there that said, it's kind of like you get to this point where you kind of have to ask, like, what's responsible? What does it look like? What's good policy? When you're making these types of decisions, how do you instill confidence in people who have basically looked at their retirement income, maybe what's going to allow them to either help their kids with university or to get into a place like a care center or whatever,
cash out,
age in place, cash out. How do you keep them from a position of losing big equity. And then also, how do you say to young people, the families of the future? Guys, communities die on the vine without families, without people moving there. You need an influx in population. I played golf, that tournament we supported on Monday, the University of Alberta Chancellor's Cup, talking to an entrepreneur who's building a big business in Edmonton. He's from Montreal. And we were talking about the housing prices and the reality in both markets. And he says, writ large in Quebec, he says Quebec has a huge issue because there's basically no immigration and all of the communities are aging out. And he says Quebec, he's talking from a workforce and staffing perspective. We're about to talk to the Alberta Business Awards of Distinction winners in partnership with the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. We're going to hear about some of the advantages, some of the challenges of doing business in Alberta. I asked this guy, why is he building a massive, massive business here in Alberta? He says, because of availability of workforce. He says in Quebec, it's a huge issue. If you don't have young families moving in, then you're in real trouble. But what do you say to young families that are seeing these housing prices go straight for the roof, right?
I have no idea how we're going to fix this. But yeah, as you just said that, when I was in Kelowna, a friend of mine, was looking at a home, went and looked at it, made an offer, and then boom, the next week someone from overseas bought it. Hasn't even set foot on the property, just buys the property for their daughter or son. It was someone in their family who was coming over to Canada to go to school. Great. I mean, at some point you have to be like, am I for this or this? And it's usually like, we all love the free market, but nowadays, like, people need places to live. And when you just said that, like when you guys were talking about investment is great, and thinking down the road and cashing out and doubling your money and starter home and all that. But I think the majority of people in lower to middle class are just like, can I get in a place where my kid is safe? There's a school nearby. There's a park. I don't have to feel scared walking home at 9 p.m. And I think everyone should have a right to live in those areas. And like, I don't like the whole thing, like, let's keep urban sprawl here and let's keep, the suburbs here. Like, also with Edmonton, like, all these people are coming here now. I mean, we're on all these issues we're talking about, Ryan, are all the things that, like, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal went through like 50 years ago, right? Sure. And now Edmonton's this little baby being like, oh my God, they're all on top of us. One thing I will say, you brought up the mayoral race. Is this not one of the most like chill, like we got two chill guys who shout out to Tim Cartmell and Andrew Knack, but kind of boring, you know what I mean? Like I'm not endorsing him, but I'm almost excited for
Rahim Jaffer
to come in here and mix things up a bit, because it's been kind of quiet, right?
Yeah, this is here. Listen, I want to talk about the Rahim Jaffer thing. I want to get more of these comments, and then we're going to get to our Alberta Business Awards winners. We have a roundtable coming up this episode. Yeah, wait, there's more. We're going to hear about these amazing success stories and what drives them. I know that the chat's going to be with us here, but just real quick, John. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody that these conversations happen here on this show with the amazing support of Real Talk partners like our friends at California Closets. How can we talk about building your dream home without talking about California Closets? This is a proudly Alberta-owned business, a family-owned business that's for many, many years been designing and installing the most magnificent custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. I love the entire story on California Closets. That's why we became customers long before I started working with them here on Real Talk. Our installation almost 10 years ago, we have the confidence not only that it looks great every day, but also that it's guaranteed for the life of our home, which is pretty incredible. And all of it was manufactured right here in Alberta. I absolutely love that. For us, it was trying to fit functional closets into a tiny little space, and then a family entertainment center that we could be proud of that would work, though, with toddlers as well. It's custom designed. It fit our space, and it fit our budget. For everybody, that's an important issue. You can learn more and request your free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. Our friends at Friesen Brothers know that it is barbecue season, and of course, they've got you covered with the best Alberta proteins on the market. That's right, Friesen Brothers is going to help you out with the ultimate Alberta barbecue experience. Beef, pork, chicken, even bison, all of it's coming from right here in Alberta. Plus, you can find freshly made buns, sourdough loaves, those sourdough cinnamon buns, and a whole lot more at Friesen Brothers in-store bakery. And keep in mind, the produce you're seeing there, wherever possible in their produce section, it's also grown right here at home. It's your one and only spot for a truly local barbecue shop-up. You can find more at friesen.com/barbecue. barbecue season. And I'm not going to talk to you about grills without talking to you about You Need a Barbecue. You may have seen on my social media platforms recently that we just picked up a grill from our buddy Russell, his team member Brian out in Sherwood Park at You Need a Barbecue. I love this independent family business that has you covered, not just with the best grills on the market. We came in there, I talked to them about what I make, how many people I typically cook for, whether it's propane or natural gas, etc., etc., etc. Would I use a side grill? Would I use a rotisserie? And then they pointed me in the direction of the best fit for our family. Hand-delivered, white glove concierge service, set it all up. If I've learned anything, Johnny, you don't ever want to assemble a barbecue on your own. So I decided not to. I left it to the team at You Need a Barbecue. Plus, they offer classes if you want to level up your own knowledge. Master your meat. You can check out youneedabarbecue.com. Michael, go ahead.
I can see the T-shirts now.
Yeah, he actually
Rahim Jaffer likes to party,
dude. Okay, so
no, and I'm not. Of course, I'm not endorsing drinking and driving, but it's just kind of like he's the guy who's gonna come in and just like drop a bomb and explode this whole thing, and obviously, like, let's just say it, no chance of winning at all, just trying to mess with things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said it. I just knew it's going to come up because, a new name has entered the Edmonton mayoral race. If you haven't yet heard, former member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona. He's the owner-operator of a restaurant in that area along White Avenue. And kind of the newest entry, there's been rumors for a long time in the capital city that Rahim Jaffer was going to take a run at the mayor's office. Mm-hmm. I thought that, and these rumblings recently, I just can't. And it's not our job here to just like take swipes at campaigns and be assholes. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I will just say that like the Conservative vote, quite frankly, is locked up in Edmonton right now. The Cartmell campaign, if the rumors are believed, has raised like closing in on $1 million. It's going to be a formidable campaign, a well-organized party. And I just can't imagine, even from a donor standpoint, like you're not going to win elections if you can't raise money. And it's going to cost you like $500,000 to $750,000 to run a legitimate mayoral campaign in the city of Edmonton. Like in recent elections, campaigns have spent $600,000, $700,000 and got walloped. And that's not to say that their platforms have been perfect, but I'm just saying a lot of people, businesses, and individuals have already donated the maximum amount, the maximum allowable amount. And so when another Conservative candidate, and I don't speak for Mr. Jaffer, and, of course, he'd be welcome to an interview on this show.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know where he's going to get the money. I don't know where he's going to find the support. The Cartmell campaign is very well organized. The Nat campaign is coming down kind of down the middle, center left, however Andrew leans. Mm-hmm. Andrew is very candid about his position on our show. You can check out those interviews in our archives. But I can't see any path to victory for Rahim Jaffer. So you got to wonder then why is he doing it?
I have no idea.
I have no idea. Get back on the public radar. Consider a return to federal politics. Maybe. I don't know. But like you alluded to as well, and listen, nobody's perfect. And when people have paid their debt to society, I believe they've paid their debt to society. But I will just say this: like if you Google Rahim Jaffer, like the first 150 Google returns are about like booze and blow. Yeah. And that's like that's like just quite frankly. I guess
found guilty. Charges went away.
I'm not
never found
and
guilty.
And that's worthwhile pointing out as well. I'm just saying, like, there's that's real talk. Is
but
like
Peter Mansbridge
Google him yourself.
Did a whole thing on what may have happened that night,
right?
And, like it was huge.
So and Jaffer was kind of known, at that time in Ottawa as a part of a group of young Conservative MPs that partied until early in the morning. And we've got nothing against partying here on the show, but also there are many reasons why I don't enter politics, and that's probably one of them.
Well, you got to party responsibly as well.
You got to party responsibly, and that's what we support.
You got to pay the piper when you fuck up. So.
I don't know. So listen, like those are the facts. You can find them out for yourself. I'll be curious to see what's going to happen with that campaign.
We got so much going on, and I know we got to get to our roundtable and other things, but I know you want to hear this. Evander Kane traded to the Canucks.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that is okay. Going back to Vancouver, he's an alum of the Vancouver Giants.
It's Pierre LeBrun on X.
Traded to the Canucks.
Traded to Vancouver.
Yeah. You know what that is? That's the Oilers clearing up space to sign Bouchard and McDavid. Kane was making what, 6.5, had one more year on his deal, I think. Mm-hmm. Had lost the support of his teammates to a certain degree. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now we can go back to bashing him as well. No,
did you see Ryan Rishaug reporting that they're expecting to see an offer sheet aimed at Evan Bouchard, an aggressive offer sheet, which could force the Oilers' hand. Now, the player doesn't have to sign it, but the way the offer sheet works is if a player signs it, the team's got to match it. The salary level, here's the deal with Bouchard, is the salary he'd probably sign on an offer sheet, and if they're offer sheeting him, it's probably going to be in the 10.5, 11 range, right? Yeah. In that salary range, that would mean the Oilers would get an influx of first-round picks, but still, I'm not sure you care about that when you lose your power play quarterback.
They're between, it's right now, this is more exciting than the draft right now because the Oilers are in but a rock and a hard place with a lot of different people, and it's like moving money here and there, and it's like, do you get rid of Bouchard because yeah, he made some mistakes in the playoffs. He makes mistakes like I think every defenseman, you'll be like, this defenseman made this mistake, that mistake, but like, look at his points, look at his goals, look at his, like, if you let him go, someone else is going to pay him that money.
Yeah. I mean, just like goalies don't grow on trees, 80-point power play defensemen don't grow on trees either.
Our next goalie will be facing those Bouchard bombs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Can you imagine he lights us up for 90 points?
Or you sell him and you get 2.5. You let him go and you get two $5 million players, and maybe that works better. I don't know.
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the breaking news. Wow, I'm not surprised to see him move. I think we kind of figured his time was up in Edmonton, but interesting. Back to the Canucks.
Kind of came out of the gate like steamrolling, and then just died down.
Well, he had some really big playoff series. I think he had that 7-goal series against Vegas. Remember that? Anyway. Okay, listen, we're going to get to the winners. A couple of the winners' remarkable stories, entrepreneurs and Alberta Chamber members, winners of the Alberta Business Awards of Distinction in just a moment. On Wednesdays, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have a chance to get outside and remind you of the memories that lie in wait in Canada's crown jewel, that is Jasper National Park. It is MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by our friends at Tourism Jasper. And I'm excited to celebrate with you today the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge golf course. It's opening. That's right. This course is celebrating 100 years. 100 years at the JPL golf course. And of course, this is consistently, perennially, annually named Canada's #1 golf resort, and for a very good reason. The Fairmont JPL is excited to announce the reopening of its renowned course on the 1st of July. That's Canada Day, coming up, marking the beginning of its centennial celebrations. Can you believe the Stanley Thompson designed course opened in 1925? And has consistently been ranked as one of the best in the world. Now, of course, I don't have to remind you that about a year ago, in July of last year, wildfire greatly impacted this property. But after extensive recovery efforts following last year's wildfires, the reopening is ushering in what they're describing as a transformative year, which is launching the next chapter for this iconic course. It's my favorite course to play in Canada. You won't find a better golf experience than you will as you look around. You're surrounded by the vistas on Pyramid Mountain and I mean, all of the different Edith Cavell, and of course that landscape. Can I get into story time a little bit, Johnny? I wanted to share a couple of my personal stories. If this doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. This is my buddy Laws. If you guys watch the show, you know all about Laws. Well, you probably remember, or maybe you don't, back in September of 2020, I sure do, I got fired, John. I got fired from my job. And my good buddy Laws reached out to me and he said, I think that we need a day on the golf course at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. And we drove out there together. The fall colors absolutely blew our minds. That tee box photo that I just showed, they call it Cleopatra. That's one of the most beautiful holes that you're ever going to play. It's just a stunning, stunning shot with Pyramid in the background. How about this? Oilers former captain, Stanley Cup champion Andrew Ference was out there for Tee Up for Tots. That's a tournament that I'm proud to host. We'll be back out there again in August, raising $1 million for the Stollery. Playing around with this guy, unbelievable. I don't think there's a sport on planet Earth that Andrew can't play. One of my favorite memories, and look at this. For those of you listening on the podcast, I'm describing just an average view on the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge golf course. Look at this. This was an incredible foursome that I had the honor and privilege of playing with at another year's edition of Tee Up for Tots. in support of the Stollery. Everybody out there, as you can see, just taking seconds. There's these quiet moments as you're putting on the green, as you look around. This view, it's difficult to process. It's hard to believe. And they're taking tee times, which means that right now is the time to get to it. If you check out Fairmont.com, we're going to link to the specific link. That's, Johnny, right there, the 14th tee box. This is, I would say, probably the signature hole on the golf course. You're teeing off over water. For a guy like me, we describe it as shaping the ball. What people who watch me play describe it as is a big slice. But you're able to shape the ball over the water, land it on the fairway, and then have a nice pitching wedge in for a birdie putt. It never works out that way for me, but that's the idea. Golf in Jasper, nothing like it. And again, the course opening July 1st. You can book your tee time and your stay at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge today by visiting the links in our show notes. MyJasper Memories is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our friends at Tourism Jasper. Well, a huge night. Just Thursday was the 19th of June. As Alberta's business leaders and really incredible entrepreneurs gathered together in celebration of the Alberta Business Awards of Distinction, as handed out by the Alberta Chamber of Commerce. And we're thrilled today to be able to present a roundtable in partnership with the Alberta Chamber, featuring a couple of the winners, big winners here at the Alberta Business Awards, and of course the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, Shauna Feth. Welcome back to the show. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having us.
You were telling me that this is like your bar none your favorite event of the year.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, we had over 200 nominees, like 33 finalists in 13 categories. And so I say to everybody at the event itself that if you are a finalist, you're already a winner in the province, because it's really tough to get through that first screening. And then just to be able to celebrate the winners and, the finalists themselves, when you hear the stories, when you're there that evening and you hear the amazing things our businesses are doing all across this province, the innovation, just their sense of community and all of the things that they're doing to make their part of the province better. It has to be celebrated, and it is my favorite event to be able to do that.
Well, we thought, wouldn't it be cool to get a couple of winners here in studio and kind of pick their brains, learn what's worked, what hasn't, through a prairie lens, as we say. And so let's officially welcome two of our winners. Annie Zaidi is the CEO and Director of HR and Business Development at Tiny Toes Castle in Red Deer, a winner of the Mentorship Award of Distinction. Annie, making your Real Talk debut. Thanks for joining us. It's nice to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
How are you wrapping your mind around this big win for you and the company?
I think we're just deeply humbled. We're deeply humbled. I think it's just one thing to mentor quietly behind the scenes, and it's another to be recognized on a provincial scale. So I think it's quite an achievement for us.
Yeah, you're in the business of daycare, which gets a lot of headlines anytime that there's there's a federal program or there's a provincial battle with Ottawa over daycare funding, or families are trying to find the perfect daycare. You're laughing, but I would imagine that it's been quite a journey.
Childcare is heavily regulated. It is a very difficult industry. So I think that, making a mark in childcare is challenging, to say the least.
I want to ask you how you're doing it, and then I'm going to get Shauna to give us a sense of what it was that elevated your business above many other worthy nominees here. But let's welcome Ashley Fedorchuk to the program as well. Ashley with World Guardian Security Services, winners of, and this is a big one, the Alberta's Best of Business Award of Distinction. First off, welcome to the show. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's World Guardian Security Services doing that you think has elevated it?
Honestly, we stay true to who we are. So we are training, anything to training. We have like our own AI security systems up and running.
Really?
So we are also doing the first locally in Alberta operations for CCTV camera assembly line. So we are in the midst of working on that, which will be the first in Alberta. So, something that we're super proud of. So that's kind of what we're working on for 2025, 2026. And, just being able to, definitely improve our training processes, all our systems, technology. We're at the forefront of it right now. So
wow.
Yeah.
People can check out your business online at worldguardian.ca. So you're talking about AI and closed circuit TV and all that kind of stuff.
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. So gone are the days of like security companies just sending by the retiree. Nothing wrong with retirees. I'm just saying everybody knows that friendly security guard that would like drive by in his Toyota Corolla every once in a while. Things have changed a little bit.
Definitely. Our owner, Akib Jamil Rain, he, started, as a guard.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he definitely, he has his bachelor's, and he's the one that knows all about the cybersecurity and did all that training and schooling for that. So I think that's where it definitely comes from, and that puts us at the forefront, is having our owner be able to have all that background.
Yeah, no kidding. A lot of the businesses, obviously, that are very successful are ones that have senior leadership that's basically worked every job in the place, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So Annie, we can check out your business at tinytoescastle.ca, a very personal business, right? Like if something happens, we see, and don't worry, I'm not going to get too controversial here, but sometimes we see the daycare nightmare stories in the news. Somebody found a daycare, a home care thing on Kijiji, and then something goes sideways and families go, oh my gosh. And then all of society, the community kind of erupts because people understand how personal the choice of a daycare is. What does Tiny Toes Castle do differently, or how have you built your business to earn not just the trust of your families, but also the accolades at the business awards?
I think that one of the most important things that we looked at is, it is a personal business, so I would say that, because I think we all have passion for working with children. I think one of the most important things in childcare is ensuring that you get like-minded people, and that's kind of hard to find, because the burnout rate is really high in childcare. And I usually tell the parents that come in for a tour, I usually tell them to, have certain questions they need to ask, make sure that the program is licensed. We used to have accreditation. We don't have that anymore, but, that's one of the things that I used to tell parents to
You're
check
saying
in.
The province doesn't have it anymore?
Yes, the province doesn't have the accreditation anymore. I think that's why I always tell people, if you want to be in childcare, educate yourself. Don't give kids childhood trauma. I think we have enough problems in this world. But I think that for us, it has always been, I think we put our heart in it. I think we're resilient, we adapt, we innovate. I think it's just, we don't just follow trends, we set them. And I think that's been I think that's the driving force behind our business, because we have a very forward-thinking approach. We're always evaluating our program and always ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the community at large, especially because, we're dealing with children. Like, you can't do warehousing with children. It's, everybody has, every child is an individual, they're unique. And every time we get our new batch of children, we realize that, okay, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
They don't do the things the other kids used to do, right? So there's always that constant, it's a very dynamic program. There's always that constant evolution and innovation that, that we do in our program. So
it's interesting to hear, like, right out of the gates, the comments and the observations from two of the big winners here, talking about how business is evolving with technology, how it's meeting customer demand. We're going to talk. I want to ask both of you about addressing staffing challenges, workforce related issues, but these are kind of common themes, obviously, that I would imagine you're hearing and you're seeing from hundreds of Alberta Chambers members.
Absolutely. And we've talked about it a lot before. We have several initiatives and projects underway that are addressing these things, like business resiliency, cybersecurity, the talent development task force addressing the needs of, how are we getting the talent into these positions sooner rather than later? How are we addressing the workforce challenges? We have a supply chain project, because that's another area where we've been really challenged in the last few years. We have the business resiliency project to support businesses as they look at things like wildfires and how they're dealing with, any disasters that are happening in their communities. And I could go on and on and on, but I would love to hear more from these two ladies. But just that, when you win an Alberta Business Award of Distinction, it means that you've really distinguished yourself in some way in terms of all of the categories and all of the nominees. Again, to just be one of the finalists is such a big deal, because it means that you're doing something special. And that's really what it's about. It's like, what is that special quality, or what is that special thing that makes these businesses stand apart? And so, it's things like innovation, ingenuity, giving back to community or giving back to employees, and all of the things that, we know entrepreneurs are doing in their communities every day in the province of Alberta, but some of them are doing it just a little bit differently. Yeah.
I'm reading some of the information in the background. Your team does such a good job with communication. People can obviously check out the website as well, Alberta Chambers of Commerce at abchamber.ca. But what everyone reading about World Guardian Security Services, so it's obviously grown from kind of grassroots startup, right? Into this multi-million-dollar Alberta-based security company, physical security, CCTV manufacturing, as you mentioned, which is interesting. Obviously, big job creation. I think you guys are expecting to create 200 plus jobs just for that.
Yeah, so we're looking to, in the next 2025 to 2026, we're looking for at least up to 500.
Wow. Creating 500
that
jobs?
we would like to do. This is what our goal is. But
so, let me ask you about that. So where are you recruiting your workforce? How are you retaining your workforce? Talk to us about staffing. Has it been a challenge?
Yeah, for us, we're built for the community and by the community. We've created hundreds of jobs within Alberta. So, we're very proud in the sense of helping people train them, and very supportive of women in security, youth employment. So that also helps us retain our employees, just by letting them know that we're kind of here for them. We'll give you everything you need to be successful, and we're able to retain that employment.
Is it would you describe it as within the security industry is fairly competitive for hiring?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it is it's definitely very competitive in security. What we're kind of finding is that awards are being given based on pricing and not by, just there are training programs, and so they're not really knowing what they're doing. So we're so honored to get this award because we're doing it the right way. And Alberta's recognizing it. So
these are some of the things that the criteria that the judges are looking at as well, is how the staffing's happening, retention, customer satisfaction, that kind of a thing as well.
Yeah. There's definitely a rubric in terms of how the awards are given out, how they are handled in terms of the judging process. And definitely, like I said, it's what stands out about one business versus another, and what are they doing differently? How are they supporting their community? So all the things that I've said, really underscoring the fact that, these are really special businesses that are doing something unique in their communities and really giving back.
Annie, I want to ask you about it. It's you don't kind of run your shop. You don't run Tiny Toes Castle just kind of a standard daycare, it doesn't seem. Let the audience know about some of this. You guys are partnering with educational institutions, community organizations to advance the sector. You've got mentorship opportunities. You're integrating them with career development, professional certification, paid practicums, business mentorship for local entrepreneurs. You've got tailored mentorship streams for youth, seniors, newcomers, Indigenous staff, individuals with disabilities. You're not just doing the bare minimum here. What's kind of driving that? Is that a personal thing for you?
It is a personal thing, and I think one of the things that, and it goes back to us, evaluating our program and meeting the community needs as well. I think that, there was a time where we saw an influx of seniors, re-entering the workforce. And instead of, kind of sticking with the status quo, we're like, okay, you know what, we need to expand our mentorship program, and we need to find ways to integrate them back into the workforce. Childcare can be challenging in terms of, these kind of dynamics, especially because there's always new research. And there were always, like I said, we're dealing with tiny human beings. So there's always going to be changes. So having seniors integrated into, the workplace can be challenging because their education can be outdated, or the skills or, the trends that they had in their time could be outdated. And I think that's where the professional development comes in handy and the mentorship comes in handy, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a bridge between our youth workers and seniors and making sure that we can work together. And it again goes back to having like-minded people, because if you're just, we believe in lifelong learning, we believe in progression. So I think that that's how we're able to, put our team together, is through our mentorship program primarily. I mean, there's other things that we do, but that's primarily how we tackle this.
Yeah, well, I'll remind people, and you won the mentorship award of distinction. So, I mean, that's a particular part of your business that's being especially recognized. I mean, it goes without saying, it's obviously a way to address potentially a workforce availability issue, right? As well, you're exploring every avenue, and obviously at the same time deciding what's best for your business.
Right.
Can you think of a mentorship example of somebody who came in, maybe had no experience or limited or deep past experience in this, and is now a key contributor to your team?
I think that, oh goodness, I have lots
or are
of
there
examples.
Times? Yeah, well,
I've got lots, so maybe I'll start with, I think that one of the programs that is under our mentorship program that is very close to my heart is our inclusion program for staff. I think that childcare, especially when we got into the industry, there weren't that many educators that had, visible or non-visible disabilities. So when we first hired our inclusion staff, it was quite challenging because, at that point, she had come in with her aid worker and she was like, you know what, she'll clean tables for you. She loves working with kids. So if you just let her clean tables, she could just watch the kids because she likes them. And I think that was one of the most important decisions that we made. We were like, if you're up for learning, we can come up with a custom tailored program for you. And it's especially difficult with inclusion staff because everybody has different disabilities, and coming up with a custom tailored program can take, it's time consuming. It does cost a lot of money, but it was very close to my heart, so that was something that we started. She started off being the lunch lady. Yeah. And then at one point she was running the toddler room, which is probably one of the most difficult rooms to run in childcare.
I am currently, I see a toddler room frequently these days, and I can't imagine being in charge.
So I think that was one of the greatest success stories that we had. I mean, there were times where she would regress because obviously she did have an intellectual disability, but we were constantly on it. We were working with her aid worker was working with her. So I think that was, that's one of the things that I remember from our mentorship program.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you about, and we'll talk about like the benefits of being a part of a chamber of commerce and a business community that has advocacy as a top priority at like a high level. But I'm curious people are always interested, especially when you hear of the success stories of hearing what you've overcome or the challenges or maybe the hurdles that maybe to this day you continue to face in business. Ashley, in your line of work in the security business, what's either a recurring or persistent or regular challenge, or what's a hurdle that the company's been able to overcome and on its way to achieving what it has to this point?
I think it's just more so the competition. The bids that go out, they're always going to want to take the lower pricing.
You're talking about like a business is looking to hire security, and so they want to see what it's going to cost them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what people look at. But we really value our everything done, like I say, the right way. It's kind of like our little motto that we have. So it is a challenge to make sure that, and to have people know, like, hey, like everybody is fully trained in our staff. These are all the products. These are the things that you can receive from us, upon like multiple sectors here. So, and then, so that's basically like our main struggle there.
Are there like in the industry, I don't know much about the security industry in Alberta. Of course, everybody will remember within the last year in Edmonton, the horrific killing of a security guard in an apartment building on 107th Avenue. And I think at that point, people were, obviously tragic for obvious reasons, but people were also looking at that scenario going, this was a young guy that had was on the job for like 2 days or something like that, as my understanding, had relatively minimal training. So what are the standards like industry-wise, and then what do they look like in your shop?
Yeah, so industry-wise, I can't say myself how they train their employees. I know that we have a full course. I know that what we struggle with is that some guards are, expected to act like police officers, and that's a full training of 5-6 years sometimes. So so we do provide that 2 years at least training to make sure that our guards are fully capable of handling those situations. So that's something that we do struggle with, because some guards are really put into these really tough situations
I can't imagine.
that they're not trained for. So this is something that we are implementing, trying to make sure that, hey, this is something that we can train you on, just so there's more safety and security for, our employees and also the business.
Yeah. Has that meant an evolution in how your company either partners with or collaborates with or communicates with local law enforcement? Is that a thing, or does security kind of operate as its own entity?
Security kind of operates as its own entity, like depending on what the situation is. Obviously law enforcement will be called in.
Right.
And that also is up to the business of what do they want to do with how that's going or what the issue is. So it is just based on like company to company, depending on if things are stolen or it's a break-in or if somebody's hurt, then
I would imagine some
of
the things.
I think law enforcement for sure be involved.
Yeah.
But for standard, it's more internal. Like the guards, take care of it.
Are more and more people hiring security these days? I'm seeing more security on job sites. People, everybody knows everyone's stealing like copper wire and lumber and all these things.
Yeah, 100%. I know that some of our big clients that are out further and have large properties, the homeless will stay on the perimeters. So I know just the other day we had a phone call from a guy saying, hey, come guard our door because we don't want any of our copper stolen.
Yeah, right. Probably costs less to hire a security guard.
So for those situations, there are definitely more and more guards being hired for that.
Annie, what's a big challenge, or maybe a recurring challenge that you're consistently looking to overcome, or maybe that the business has gotten past?
In childcare, it's the burnout rate. And I think that that's something that we have pretty much succeeded in, I would like to say. I don't think it's 100%, but I think we have the tools and we've laid the foundation for retaining our qualified staff.
How are you doing that?
There's quite a few things, like, our mental health and wellness focus is very strong. I think that was one of the things that were lacking in childcare that didn't address the burnout. There's many different things within that program. Mentorship is, again, another program that addresses some of the professional development, career development opportunities for educators. I think that just the burnout rate, I think majority of it, and of course diversity, like EDI is another focus when it comes to retaining qualified staff. But I would say primarily it's health and wellness, because that is one of the primary reason why there's a burnout rate and why we're losing a lot of qualified educators. I think that and again, it's also the mindset. A lot of the times childcare is viewed as a foolproof business. So, I always encourage people to, look at if you have the passion to work with children, then get into childcare, because it's not just about the profit. So I think that's the things that we're doing right. I think it's the heart behind the hard work that keeps us in childcare.
I like that, the heart behind the hard work. Is that one of your official taglines?
Well, it should be now.
Did you just drop a tagline on me? I think you got your new T-shirt idea. There
yeah,
you go.
I have lots of T-shirt ideas. It's funny.
People can check out more at abbusinessawards.com, and you can check out all the winners. It's always exciting for me to see some of our friends on this list. A shout out to our friends at Diplomat Consulting, winning a small business award. I always celebrate the newcomer entrepreneurs, 350 Farms out of Bonnyville. There's a ton for marketing. How about Goodwill Industries of Alberta? That's cool to see them on there.
Yeah, so we actually just did an interview with Global with those two finalists.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah, that's great. I mean, I just think to see the diversity here in the businesses. You got insurance businesses, security businesses, childcare, community attraction. The Wilder Institute at the Calgary Zoo wins the Community Attraction Award. I mean, there's just all kinds of different businesses and industries represented, which I think also is a testament, Shauna, to state the obvious, to the membership of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. In a diverse province with diverse industry, you're obviously going to have a diverse membership.
Absolutely, and we really celebrate that. I mean, that's what makes us, the uniqueness of the chamber movement is that it's grassroots. It comes from our local community chambers. The advocacy that we do is coming from your communities, wherever you're at, and then we are in a privileged position to actually be able to speak on behalf of communities at a provincial level with our elected officials, and then at a national level as well. And the reality is any of the advocacy that we do on behalf of business is coming from situations happening in northern Alberta and situations happening in southern Alberta, central Alberta, in urban communities and rural communities. And so, we represent about 23,000 businesses across the province.
23,000.
Yeah. So obviously there's a great celebration of the diversity in that alone in terms of, and these awards, the 13 awards really celebrate that as well in terms of who's doing great things, and everything from newcomers to Indigenous to female entrepreneurs to mentorship to being the best in business actually means that out of all of the finalists, that was the best business in terms of our judges, our neutral judges that decided that. And so that's one of the things that we value highly at the Chamber, is that network, that grassroots network. And really the celebration of, entrepreneurs come in every shape and size. And, we've even seen young entrepreneurs, 16 years old, nominated for some of these awards.
Is that right?
Where they're doing fantastic things. So it's pretty exciting to again, be able to celebrate that.
16. Amazing.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, we've got organizations like Junior Achievement that celebrate that on an ongoing basis, but we don't necessarily think that, we've got 16-year-olds that are actually chamber members who are being nominated for awards and actually so engaged in their community even before they graduate high school.
That's
in some cases. And then we've got all of the other kaleidoscope of businesses in the province. So
we always look at like the health metric of our business, of our audience, of our operation is like, do we draw audience from different locations? Do we draw audience from different generations, from different income brackets, from different educational backgrounds? And it's really neat to see the same thing with a chamber membership. To me, that's like a real sign of health, in particular when you have real young energy as well. Like, look at these communities, though. I want to shout out a lot of these. I mean, I won't read them all, but like, the workplace in Grand Prairie, and then a ton of businesses down in Calgary. Congratulations to them, including the female entrepreneur, Brightwire Leadership. Awesome to see in the Metro Edmonton region. Jack 59 winning an Indigenous business award here in Edmonton. Health and wellness down in Red Deer, Beyond Insurance. You got Bonnyville representatives mentioned. Grand Prairie, Coolios, the young entrepreneur. Is that the one you're talking about? Amazing. Or is that another one down in Grand Prairie? So really cool to see. Would you Annie, for you, like the chamber membership, like when you're, obviously I think that you're probably paying close attention. I mean, there's people in our chat right now talking about the $10 a day program, and everybody's like, obviously for a lot of people, this is one of the biggest issues in their life for obvious reasons. When it comes to advocacy, when it comes to having your perspectives represented, picking the brains of fellow entrepreneurs, that sort of a thing, how does your chamber membership facilitate that sort of thing?
I think that with Alberta Chamber, we feel very connected. I think we are seen as a small business. I think for the most part, I think we advocate for the challenges that we feel are, that is impacting childcare. I had a conversation with one of the chamber members regarding the subsidies that have been put in place. Not necessarily, subsidy actually. One of the challenges that we're facing is just that it used to be income-based and now it's not income-based anymore. So I think that our perspective on it is, it's not really fair for somebody making high income to pay, to get the same funding that a low-income family would get. So that conversation was very well received, and, so we're going to be taking it further. So I think that we are openly able to discuss the concerns and issues that we have, so feel quite supported in that area.
Yeah, very cool. How about for you? I mean, the security business, how does the chamber membership most benefit the business?
Well, being part of Alberta's business community gave us visibility very early on, so that gave us credibility to gain bigger clients, bigger partnerships, and that actually is what took us from a small startup company to province-wide operation. So, yeah.
I like that. Visibility, advocacy. I mean, that's kind of the whole deal, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's what we do.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us, and congratulations to the two of you. I thought you guys were going to bring the awards in. Like if I was you, I would just be carrying this thing around with me all day long. I don't know about you. Probably back at the facility with it, you put some custom pot lighting right over that, right? Let it sit up there, remind everybody how you're innovators in your space. And congratulations to you and your team, Shauna. Again, I'll let people know, and we'll punch it into the show notes, but you can check out abbusinessawards.com if you want to learn more on the celebration of Alberta business excellence. You can learn more about each of the businesses that have been featured with the hardware and, of course, the nominees as well, and then learn more about the benefits of membership. We're proud to be chamber members. You can check out abchamber.ca, the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. And then, of course, you and I are going to hang out again in a short while. You make your monthly visit here. We've got our eye on Alberta business. No shortage of things to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right?
July is going to be an interesting one, that's for sure.
July is going to be a little bit bonkers, and I'm hoping in a good way, right? I mean, you and I have spoken to this at length before, and people can always check out the highlights on our YouTube channel, the Real Talk Ryan Jesperson YouTube channel, for all of the Eye on Alberta segments, Alberta business. But, the Prime Minister's commitment and working with the First Ministers, with the premiers, to get free trade happening between provinces, this summer, is something I would imagine that you and your team is keeping a pretty keen eye on.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about this before, not just in Alberta, but all of the CEOs from the provincial and territorial chambers have come together as chambers of the Federation to work collectively with our premiers on key messaging around interprovincial trade, energy corridors, procurement, talking about how do we start negotiating CUSMA earlier. So there's lots of stuff for us to talk about, because we're really watching what the Prime Minister is doing on these fronts in terms of, even C5, to see
Bill
what
C5,
to see what type of energy or what type of national economic projects are going to be approved, and we're hoping that that's going to have a huge impact on some of the stuff that we want to move forward in Alberta.
Yeah, C5 is the kind of build stuff fast bill.
It is.
Right?
It is, and it's going to be interesting to see how those projects are actually chosen. There's, for Alberta, there are some legislation in place that's going to really kind of hinder that ability for us to do some of that stuff, especially when you talk about energy and that transition to, a greener economy. There's some bills that are really challenging there. So we're going to just wait and see what July 1st brings.
When you're hanging out with the CEOs of these chambers across the country, it's like when the premiers get together, it's not all in the, is it safe to say not everybody's on the same page? BC and Alberta sometimes see eye to eye, sometimes definitely don't. Alberta and Saskatchewan typically do. Alberta and Manitoba, under an NDP government there, a Conservative government here, you don't get the sense that it's a combative relationship, but they have different priorities. Alberta and Quebec, in some ways similar, in many ways different. What's it like with the chamber CEOs?
So it's a very collegial group. So what I would say, Ryan, is this is brand new. So we started doing this in November of last year. And it took us from November until we met with Premier Ford, who was the head of the Council of the Federation. It took us that long to come up with the 4 priorities. But it was done in a very respectful and collegial way, in terms of saying, okay, let's put our own provincial interests aside and think what is the best for the country, because we were dealing with such challenges with tariffs and things that were happening south of the border. And really needed to come together and say, these are our priorities, and we did that in a really, really respectful environment. But we came up with priorities that are going to have huge impact on all of our provinces at a high level, in terms of, I've said it on your show before, but if we could figure out the interprovincial trade challenge, if we would have had that figured out, tariffs would have been a blip on the radar in terms of being able to nearshore our GDP, in terms of what we would have lost to tariffs. And some of those national energy projects, I mean, the numbers and the dollars are astounding in terms of what's been left on the table from an investment perspective. And so for us as CEOs, just being able to align on key priorities around what is most important for Canada, and kind of talk about, what it is that's important to your province, but at the same time, just think about what's going to have the most impact on the country as a whole. Well,
you and your team and you on this show on a monthly basis have been driving those conversations. And of course, we welcome audience feedback as well to talk at RyanJasperson.com. We want to hear from entrepreneurs. We want to hear from business owners, either the challenges, like we've been hearing here from Ashley and Annie and Shauna representing the membership, or how you're overcoming them. What are the biggest issues that you're facing? Let's keep this conversation going. Talk at RyanJasperson.com. Again, you can learn more about the advocacy efforts, the work that the Alberta Chambers of Commerce is doing on their website, abchamber.ca. Our thanks to these big winners. Annie Zaidi, CEO of Tiny Toes Castle. Shout out to Red Deer. Red Deer will always have a big place in my heart. I started my career in Red Deer. I met my wife in Red Deer. I love Red Deer, 100%. And Ashley Fedorchuk here with World Guardian Security Services, winner of Alberta Best of Business Award of Distinction. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you again soon for the next Eye on Alberta Business.
Absolutely, Ryan. Looking forward to
All
it.
right, you three. Thanks very much. And again, congratulations. These conversations happen here on Real Talk as well with the support of amazing partners like our friends at North Road Investment Council. Check out their website today at northroadic.com. If you're lying awake at night with questions on your personal financial future, we've been talking a lot about that today, haven't we? Housing investments, community investments, entrepreneurs. You're wondering if you even have enough to retire, what your plan needs to look like, whether or not you're going to be able to withstand future market interruptions. Marshall Carey and the team at North Road Investment Council offer a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. And they're not making commissions by selling you a bunch of products from the big banks. It's not how it works there. They're independent fiduciaries, which means you're just going to pay them a per-hour fee. There's no fluff. There's zero pressure. Just clear advice and strategies that make sense. You can learn more about what sets them apart, what makes them different with their 4 different service business units, including, I love what they do with digital risk advisory. Again, on their website, that's North Road Investment Council at northroadic.com. We're also spending a lot of time talking about the future generations, the future of our communities. Well, that all starts by investing in young people, and nobody's doing that in more of a significant way than UCAN Youth Services. You can read about the work they're doing with their relentless outreach workers, their ready-to-work programs. They're helping vulnerable young people, tweens, teens, young adults find their way back into education or into employment and out of some of these really harmful lifestyles. It's a compelling story. I mean, the return on this investment is incredible. You can check out their website, ucan.ca. If you're in a position to hire young, skilled workers in entry-level positions, consider a partnership with UCAN Youth Services, just like IKEA has, off the top of my head as an example. That's what they do. Plugged into community, making a big impact. That's UCAN Youth Services. Athabasca University, Canada's open university, and we've been given a shout out over the past couple of weeks. Big celebratory vibes to the graduates of 2025 from AU, including their MBA class. They've got hundreds of world-class degrees, courses designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. You know that more than 92% of AU alumni say that they're in a job related to their field of study. What? More than 9 in 10 are working in the exact field they were wanting to work in? That's not the case with every university graduate, but it is at AU. You can learn more about the AU Advantage by checking out their website. That's athabascau.ca. And our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy reminding you they are literally always hiring. If you bring a lot to a team, but you're not happy right now with your current work situation, check out kubi.ca. That's kuby.ca. Click on solar and then click on careers, and you can find their up-to-the-minute job postings. They're always hiring in Alberta and BC, currently in Lethbridge, Kamloops, Calgary, and Edmonton, including sales and installation. If you're an apprentice, if you're getting your ticket, if you have a lot of experience designing solar energy systems, this could be a big step for you in your own career. Again, that's the careers link at kubi.ca/solar. Of course, our friends at Kubi presenting Positive Reflections, the first episode of every week. In our most recent episode, that was Real Talker Justin sharing the news of his beautiful new daughter arriving on planet Earth, and a shout out to them. I love Positive Reflections. Our goal, Johnny, every single week is that it makes us smile so big that our faces hurt. So there you go. There you go.
We need it. Yeah. We need our dose every week.
We do.
Because this continues when we get off camera. All this stress, the emails. It's not just 2 hours of comments on YouTube. It's all day.
It is. Well, you were doing. Yeah,
we chose this though
to take you to re-traumatize you from yesterday. You spent a whole bunch of time doing the stuff that's not exciting. But I mean, this is why I love talking.
Tell my therapist all about it on Thursday.
But I love listening to hearing business owners and talk about their own trials and tribulations and struggles, because everything or many things can look glamorous on the surface, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work behind the scenes, and
Well,
we got a ton of respect for people that grind it out and make it happen.
The best juice is worth the squeeze. Like
Yes.
we were talking yesterday with Kyla. Like,
Yeah.
Who do I want investing in downtown Edmonton? Who do I want building that community and culture and making amazing spaces and, work environments and restaurants and cocktail places and just meeting places? I want people who have obviously you have to raise the capital, but I want people who have been through the struggle and stayed with it. Someone who has multiple businesses who yesterday said like some of them, earning 6% or whatever.
Yeah. 6% profit in restaurants, she was saying.
Yeah.
And that's if you're dialed in.
But has held out, has been through it multiple times, knows what it takes to do it, puts in the blood, sweat, and tears. Isn't someone who just comes in, tries something, it's not making money after 6 months, sell it kind of thing. I want those people who are in it for the long haul. Those are the people that are going to strengthen the community and stay there for a long time.
Yeah,
right?
that's our June 24th episode, by the way, that Johnny's referencing. You can check it out. I was just showing it here. So we had Edmonton's former mayor Don Iveson on, but the roundtable also including, that's Kyla Kazil you're talking about, an entrepreneur who's done really remarkable stuff and one of the things I think is fascinating about Kyla is that she's in the hospitality industry. She's like in the restaurant business with like the Common and Foos and Dolly's, and these are familiar names I think to Albertans, especially Edmontonians, but also in the clothing business. And those are not the same thing, right? Like I think just because you're successful in restaurants doesn't mean you can open a clothing shop and vice versa. And I thought that it was cool to have her dish on the secrets of her success. And then Tegan Martin Drysdale, who comes in here and just like as a force. We heard from a lot of you actually great feedback. Talk at RyanJesperson.com on what Tegan's doing in this kind of an interesting new model on downtown revitalization and kind of like group. It's not crowdfunding really, but it's an opportunity for people to invest in business. If you want to learn more, just check out the episode. Yeah. We're not promoting it. We're not investors in it, but I just thought it was interesting to pick their brain. And we also have a flamethrower submission from Jennifer. I'm saving it. I'm tempted to read it right now. The flamethrower presented weekly by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Your chance to basically blow off a little steam, your hottest takes, to talk at RyanJesperson.com. But Jennifer wrote in, pretty pissed off about what Don Iveson had to say. She felt like the former mayor of Edmonton was kind of passing the buck.
Come on, he doesn't have the job anymore. He doesn't have the job.
Well, but it's interesting. Like when you speak as a former mayor, critical of and not necessarily.
Sure,
he was not criticizing council.
He waded into
but he
it.
basically the tone of it, and people can check it out for themselves. But he basically said like, well, actually, can I play it off? Johnny, we've got all this new. I can just play it off here, can't I?
We've leveled up.
We've leveled up, and now, but here's the dangerous thing, John, is that you have now put me in charge of some technical elements of this show. Which
it might not fire off right away, but
it's not gonna. I forgot. Yeah, here, you know what we'll do is I can play it off my Twitter account, can't I? Is there anything that this show can't do? But I'll just play this where Don Iveson basically says that all critics of Edmonton. He says like Edmonton's not alone in kind of struggling as a city. So here it is. Here's former Mayor Don Iveson. Just
really
kidding.
Difficult to lead in cities on this continent, particularly. I keep in touch with a number of former mayors and folks who are still in office. And, as Edmontonians, we're the first to give ourselves a hard time and internalize the things that don't feel like they're going well in our downtown, for example. So I spent a lot of time in Canada's other big cities, and they're all struggling with the same things. And so this narrative that some folks are grinding that Edmonton did this to itself, I am so sick and tired of that. And I was frustrated by that when I was mayor, but I've only seen it get worse. And I think it's social media, it's uncertainty, it's post-COVID, traumatic stress. I don't really blame anyone for it, but we got to get over it. When we turn on ourselves and start to blame ourselves or lose confidence or try to pin it on one person, that's when we're not focused on the solutions. We're focused on scoring points.
Okay, so that's Don Iveson talking about how Edmonton's basically not alone in struggling with things like downtown vacancies,
which I agree
obviously
with.
the opioid crisis, housing affordability, the housing crunch, et cetera. And I know some people have written in and basically said, like, Edmonton. I don't want to ruin the flamethrowers, but some people have said like Edmonton has actively chased
People are
away.
saying, read it.
Yeah, read it.
Yeah, read
should I
it.
just fucking read it?
No.
I should
Finish
save
your point
it. It's
first.
a good,
Finish your
no,
point.
fucking
Finish
read
your
it. I'll
point.
read it.
Finish your point.
But basically, they, this emailer Jennifer, I'm just loading it up as we speak, wrote in and basically said like that's not the case. Like it's not the same thing for absolutely everybody, and it was kind of inaccurate for the mayor to portray it like that. So. This gives you a sense in real time when I'm trying to find something in my email inbox on what you beauties have done. My inbox is just full of hot takes, and I absolutely love it. Wouldn't change a thing. But she goes on the record and also says that like it's significant for the mayor because of his role as chair of the CMHC. Like when he's talking about housing affordability and the housing crunch, like there's some I don't want to say culpability, but there's a responsibility there. Here's Jennifer's email. We don't need to fire up the rock band, and maybe I'll represent it on the on the flamethrower. But she says, I just want to say, after hearing that interview with former Mayor Iveson, this like everything that he said is like absolutely factually untrue. She says Don Iveson's limited perspective on the reason that people are not seeing the value in downtown is actually that it has not been prioritized or respected by city administration or by the community. His small-minded viewpoint that a new co-op, is going to change the terms. And to be fair, Iveson didn't present this co-op investment as the solution to downtown. It was kind of two different things in the interview. But she says market-driven analysis, Jennifer says, continues to drive all of this. And until we change how Edmonton services the core, we're not going to see investment. And anything else is delusional. She says, secondly, you're the chair of CMHC, Don, so how are you densifying downtowns across the country? That from Jennifer, who submitted that as a flamethrower, so I thought it was interesting. Also of note, we saw that Panita McBrien has stepped aside. She's going to stay on until her replacement is named. Is she executive director or CEO? I think she's CEO of the Downtown Business Association.
She owns downtown,
in
I
Edmonton.
believe.
She basically owns downtown and runs downtown. But she has been the straw that has stirred the drink downtown for a long time, and she's obviously a valued, a recurring Real Talk panelist. So we'll pick her brain on
why,
what's going on and maybe why. I mean, I think she basically
maybe
said
she'll spill the
yesterday,
tea.
Well, she's not going to light the place on fire on the way out. I guarantee that. And I know that she's still, I don't speak for her, but she's still obviously very passionate about downtown projects and what's happening downtown. But she basically said in a quick release, I will say, it was kind of unexpected to me because she's just been so involved in everything. But she said like 5 years is a good time for renewal. Reached out to her and I said, what are you doing next? She says, I'm not sure. She says, what did I? So I said, she'll be a hot commodity on the job market.
For sure.
If that's actually true, by the way, it's not up to us to speculate on individuals' personal lives, but I do think, can you, like, stepping away from a job without a safety net is both exhilarating and I would imagine terrifying.
It's
right?
fun.
You
have
like,
to do it just once.
Just once in your life. You're like, I'm just not feeling it, or I want to take, like LeBron did going to Miami. I'm going to take my talents somewhere else. He's taking his talents to South Beach.
I've done it a few times.
Have you really? Yeah. You've resigned from something without having the next step?
No, been fired and then had to figure it out. But
that's different.
You build up a thick skin and resiliency.
That's different.
I did it once. But other than that, I was already used to it because in media, like you get recycled, you get churned, you get somebody, things get slashed. Somebody goes up above you on the ladder, skips a spot, and it is exhilarating. It's amazing, and it builds you a thick skin. But at the same time, it's not like you wish anyone would be going through it. You're not like, everyone should do this. It's great training, but for people like Panita, like. I think she'll be fine, right?
Yeah. Oh, she'll be more than fine.
Yeah.
Ivana says, I found it gaslighting what Dawn said on the show. Scarlett says we've been revitalizing downtown for like 40 years. When is it going to work? To a certain degree, Scarlett's not wrong.
Well, it's
maybe
it's
not 40,
not
but
like
I'll take your point.
improvements
It's
haven't been
basically
made,
like, people always say, and I think that this is maybe a little bit lazy. Well, it's definitely lazy, but not 100% inaccurate. When people say like West Edmonton Mall killed Edmonton's downtown, I think that's a little bit of an oversimplification. But there is a major retail center in the west end of Edmonton, which may hurt downtown to a certain degree. But Calgary's, I mean, I don't know. You take a look at the tale of two cities, and Calgary's downtown is not perfect. but it's packed and it's vibrant and it's happening. And I talked to friends I was just down there last weekend. Friends of mine are like, gosh, there's so many vacancies in Calgary. I'm going, man, dude, take a trip 3 hours north.
Yeah.
And you know us, I'm not a pessimist, and I'm trying not to be a cynic. We want to be optimists. We've dumped a bunch of dough into this studio, and we're here for a reason, downtown, because we want to be in the heart of the action. But Scarlett's right. Like, I think that there's also, like, you take a look at the legacy of different mayors, like Bill Smith, Jan Reimer, Stephen Mandel, obviously Don Iveson. You're looking at, Amarjeet Sohi. I wouldn't say much of a legacy downtown with Sohi. It feels like kind of a blip, respectfully. But we'll see what the next mayor will do with downtown, because it's a huge challenge. There's been billions of dollars in investment. And
well,
right now, whether it's home ownership, whether it's businesses, a lot of people downtown, I think, are doing their best, especially entrepreneurs doing their best to be optimistic, but they're also realistic. Huge numbers coming out of the Stanley Cup final or this playoff run too. Do you see this?
Yeah,
like
$250
million invested in Edmonton's downtown.
So
that's a great start.
Yeah, that is great, but it's also like I don't get why people complain like, Edmonton downtown is this, Edmonton downtown is that, and then I say, like, how many times do you go downtown? They're like, oh, like twice a month. Like, you have to come here. Yeah. You have to invest in your city if you want it to be better. Like, what more can this, like, there's always more the city can do as it grows, and always more investment. But, like, what more can we upgrade? You have one of the best, if not the best, concert, sporting venues, ice district going on downtown in any province in Canada. Everything's been upgraded. The art gallery, the library, the museum, like there's only so much you can do before it's like, it's also up to the people to come down here, spend
100%.
money in the shops and the cafes, and go to the library and take the public transit and get on the train and do all these things. And yeah, it's up to the city to make sure all those things are safe and accessible and affordable, but it's a two-way street, right? It's not just like, make downtown amazing. Like, well, what do you want us to do?
What else
like,
do you want?
Put entertainers on every corner? Like, I don't understand what you're saying.
But, like, there are parts in the summer when there are literally entertainers on every corner.
Everywhere.
And still,
like,
Scarlett
we're downtown
follows
every
up.
day.
She says, she says, yeah, billions in investment, but ignoring the real issues that will really help people. And she's also true about that. We talked about that. I think it was yesterday, wasn't it? Our most recent episode about, the decrease in funding, the funding cuts to many frontline, and I'm talking like social service agencies that have been around for decades and do like a ton of heavy lifting when it comes to the real community needs in the downtown core. You can't pull millions and millions of dollars of fundings from these agencies that force them to suspend or halt the services that they've been offering, and then expect improvements in the issues in the downtown that a lot of people are reporting, which is like perception around safety, what Edmonton's doing to address its unhoused population and to create resources that will allow people to improve themselves, to have basic dignity. That all comes, like, when you're talking about investment, that's a big part of that.
But all these things, we're slowly trying to fix all these things. I'm always going to wave the flag of Edmonton, and like we're trying to make things better all the time. And yeah, Calgary has a little bit of an easier ride. I mean, you got the mountains in the back. Like, it's just there's a bit of a more of a vibe. Like, we have to create that vibe in Edmonton. With this flat, windy, dusty city that's cold 8 months out of the year. We have to create that. But you also have to have a willingness to want to invest in your city and come downtown. And you're talking about these things, but we do, those projects are coming, right? We are getting like a new, what is it, $1 to $2 million shelter for houselessness. We are trying.
No, 20. Are you talking the King? No, it's like King Thunderbird. It's like 20
crazy,
million.
right?
It's a huge amount. Yeah.
And then, like, it's just we're trying to do things, but it can't just be like you said. You can't just keep pulling from the well, and then everyone's like somebody just commented the sidewalks aren't big enough downtown. That's why they don't come here. Well, no. I was like, what?
Well, the good news for them is that they're widening a bunch of the sidewalks, if that helps. But it's all about livability, man. It's all about, like, I thought it was interesting that Blackford
people
came up earlier.
Gotta want to live downtown,
right?
too.
Yeah, and so you got to have things that will draw. People are discerning property buyers. I will say this, like, I'm not a realtor, obviously, but you take a look at where housing values are at, like accommodations, in particular the condo market in downtown Edmonton, and it like blows people's minds. And I recognized the comment earlier today where a guy said that's a really privileged position to say that $375,000 is cheap or affordable housing. I recognize that it's not affordable for everyone. 100%. But if you tell somebody somewhere else in Canada, in particular Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc., that you can roll in right now and get a 1,000 square foot condo in Edmonton, you can get downtown condos for like $200 a square foot, which is like blows people's minds in other parts of Canada. It's like 1,000. It's like 1,200 per square foot in other cities. So relatively affordable, not affordable for everybody. Again, this comes back to, the fact that like people are, experiencing different things. We try to reflect all these perspectives on the show. But there still is opportunity, and there's a draw for people to move downtown.
100%. When people complain like today on the show about traffic or like, safety and all these things, I'm like, man, safety and less traffic, these are all the reasons people are moving here. Opportunity, a little slower pace, like big city with small town feel. Like all the reasons you think Edmonton is going wrong is the reason people are coming here. They think it's safer. They think there's less traffic. They think homes are more affordable. And in many respects, all those things are true to someone who's coming from Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal or somewhere else. So there's a lot of things to be proud of Edmonton, but like any big city, you never just stop and say, okay, we're done.
No,
the city's perfect.
You can't.
Like you always have to keep
and it's
improving.
competitive. Like we referenced the Alberta's Calling campaign, a provincial campaign, obviously trying to draw people to Alberta. Maybe too good of a campaign because Alberta's bursting.
It worked, Ron.
We're not bursting at the seams, but our communities are experiencing growing pains. Put it that way. Those are two different things. But Vamp Fashion's here. What did you see this one? Vamp wondering, would it be so hard to imagine and create some 24/7 access, heated, secure spaces that allow people without keys, to be warm, to keep their stuff, to find something to do, to access Wi-Fi, to use the facilities. Scarlett says the issue is that it's very expensive to provide that service, and of course it is. And you got to have it monitored. You got to have proper security, proper resources there available, healthcare resources, etc.
We try in small doses, like for example, like the washrooms on White Ave.
But a lot of those have been defunded.
Yeah,
but the washrooms are a good example.
But like again, like then you need to put like security there. You need to put other. People need to be employed to watch people and care for people and make sure things are going right.
But also, you can take a look at the cost of doing something versus the cost of not doing something.
100%.
That's a valid
I think those
conversation,
washrooms,
too.
like, dude, people used to be not just people who are experiencing houselessness and stuff. People in general who are just, a Friday night, Saturday night,
hammered.
I remember before those washrooms were there, it was a little.
Everybody pisses behind dumpsters,
alleys,
and nobody likes it. It's like, I saw a homeless guy. It was like, peeing in the alley, and it's like, well, are there any washrooms available to this human? Like this like human with, we want to be able to like live and have a certain expectation of like a dignified existence.
Gets kicked out of every store.
Gets kicked out of everything. They do. Like, what are you supposed to do? Yeah. Right? What are you supposed to do?
They definitely helped.
Want to like sort of like address these issues from like a realistic standpoint and propose solutions. Ken K says traffic in Edmonton's a cakewalk compared to other cities. He does say downtown still needs a lot of help though, but it's true, man. I always joke around about you can get anywhere in the city in 25 minutes.
I grew up just outside the GTA in Ontario.
Oh, brutal.
And when I grew up, it was horrible. Now I go back there. Like there's no way I would rent a car, drive anywhere. 401, 407, it's packed. Like even downtown, the outside, the outskirts, Oshawa, Coburg, Pickering, the places where I grew up and hung out. It's just traffic is absolutely insane. And if you've never experienced it, it's unbearable. And then I get in my car today and I come from the south side. I turn off Ellerslie. I get on Calgary Trail. It's 20 minutes. I'm downtown.
Yeah.
Boom.
By the way, Cascade making a very good and important point in our live chat powered by Park Power says, Jespo, it's only men that are pissing behind the dumpsters, which may be true. Although I was at the Summerfest Music Festival in my
story.
Oh no, it's just I just want to tell you about a character that I met. Happens to be a real talker, by the way, which made my day because she is like a vibe. Her name's Ingrid in the community of Parkland in Southeast Calgary where I grew up. Shout out to Parkland. They do amazing things, including the Summerfest Music Festival. So much fun. And she's like 6 feet tall. She is like just absolutely driving the party in this festival, seating for this music festival. And she turns around and her hat says, I pee in pools. And I thought, gosh, that is a whole
fair.
vibe.
Like who?
You know what else I witnessed later in that evening? So a guy comes up to her later. They don't know each other. And the guy comes up. You know how it goes at music festivals. Everyone's making new friends. The guy comes up and he says, I love your hat. Says, I pee in pools. Says, I love your hat. And she goes, yeah, thanks. Everybody's. And he goes, how much do you want for it? And she goes, it's not for sale.
Wow.
And the guy reaches into his pocket, pulls out a 50, and he goes, I'll give you $50 for that hat right now. She takes it off her head, puts it on his head. He gives her the $50, and she goes, aha! She says, that was $8 on Amazon. And he goes, I don't care. I want it right now. And I thought, what just happened there? I pee in pools. Yeah. There you go. Don't pee in pools, kids.
Our friend Garth, who's been on the show, says, so is Johnny saying that until Edmonton gets as bad as Toronto, Vancouver, and Chicago, we should then we should complain?
Yeah.
No, I just mean that, like, right now when you're living in Edmonton, we're in this weird cusp where, like, yeah, we have difficulties, we have stuff we need to address, but at the same time, you have a big city with amazing amenities. Like, number one, I don't go back to it because I work there, but Rogers Place, like one of the most amazing concert sporting events, Ice District. You've got a lot of upgrades downtown. And at the same time, it's I know people have issues with safety because we're growing, but it's relatively safe here. So enjoy it, because undoubtedly we're going to grow. We're going to be bigger. Like, think of when we have 2 million people.
Man,
Premier
Smith's talking about the population in Alberta doubling
that's when
in the next 30, 40 years.
That's when real issues start happening, and you'll constantly have to address them and adjust and focus on different things as the problems come up. But right now, I'm saying that we are the envy of a lot of Canada.
Yeah, and this conversation comes full circle, right? It comes back to, with an influx in population, a housing and affordability crunch, how do we design, how do we plan, how do we build out our communities, which is exactly where we started with Travis Watt. It just took us 2 hours to do it.
Nobody lays down in town and is like, you know what, in 25 years, we're going to need bigger sidewalks.
Oh, they do, though. There's a 50-year city plan.
They just start with Main Street.
It's a city. Oh, my gosh. Don't get me started on who first built Edmonton. Don't even get me started. Drives me absolutely nuts that there was anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not a city planner. There's probably things I don't understand.
We'll
but
do a throwback
let's make sure
episode.
that if anybody lives downtown in the city center and needs to get to the airport, let's put them in 50K an hour stoplight every time. Yeah, you got to go 20 minutes east or west before you can go 30 minutes south. Anyway, I digress. There's people smarter than me, including Kaylin Anderson, who was recently on the show as well. That was a great episode. Was it on the 6th of June? I think it was with Rohit Gupta, and we were talking about just how cities are built and the communities are planned. Mm-hmm. And, you can check that out on our. I think it was pretty sure it was the 6th of June, that episode. As we wrap today, we just want to let you know that we're going to follow up on a couple of stories in our next episode. That'll be the 26th of June that we've been following. Supriya Dwivedi's back to take a look at what's happening federally, politically. We'll talk about C5, that bill that Shauna brought up. Some pretty prominent people pushing against it, including Jody Wilson-Raybould, right, former Justice Minister. Plus, the Alberta Public Survey is out about those library books. We'll talk to the Education Minister, and we'll follow up with librarian Laura Winton. We hope you'll join us then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjasperson.com.